Hi, I'm here with Sara Oehler, and she's an author and a seed bead expert. Welcome, Sara.
Thanks for having me, Katie. I'm so excited to be here.
And we are happy to have you. And I love this project. It goes perfectly with Under the Sea.
It does, yes. I used a really great starfish clasp that I think is just adorable.
Yeah, let's take a look at that clasp. That is really adorable.
It is.
And made by our artistic friends.
Yes, definitely.
And those sea green colors are perfect for this too.
Right, you can really capture a mood with color for sure.
Well, and I think part of what is exciting is to see so many new patterns developing with 2-hole beads.
Definitely, yeah. I love using all the different kinds of beads that are out there today, and I feel like that's really where the innovation's happening in the beading market, is all these different kinds of seed beads that you can work with.
Isn't it fun?
It's so fun.
I love it too. Well, how do we get started with this guy?
Okay, so I used 2 different diameters of beading wire in this design, and why I did that is because I always feel like it's a lot of work to do a bead weaving project, and if you use a thread, it's wonderful because it'll fit through the holes, but it can be abraded really easily. It can break apart. So I used a really thick, medium 019 diameter beading wire to attach the clasp, and then we're gonna jump into bead weaving with our 0.010 beading wire for the bead weaving. So all of it's done with wire, which is to me really exciting because you don't see that a lot.
It gives it a lot of body too. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a piece that really stands up to some wear and tear.
Definitely, which I have toddlers, so I know about wear and tear. Okay, so I'm using 0.019 inch beading wire, and I'm going to take a 2x2 millimeter crimp tube. I will string it onto my wire and then pass it through my toggle bar. Go back into my crimp tube for the first pass and snug it up. And then I'm gonna take this wire and I'm gonna string a duo bead, and I'll go ahead and pass it back into this crimp tube for a 3rd time. Now, this is a pretty tight pass, so it's a little hard to do on camera. So I went ahead and prepared one just to make it a little easier, but it does fit through 3 times. Sometimes you have to kind of fidget with it to make it work. So now that I've got my wire going through both ways, you can see it almost looks like kind of like a little bow tie. It's equal proportions on each side. I call this a connector. I'm going to take my crimping plier, and I'm gonna set the crimp tube in the center of the plier, and I'm gonna compress. And the first time I compress, it's gonna create what looks like a little 4-corner ravioli. I'm gonna turn it on its side inside that same plier, and I'm gonna compress again. So it's taking the tube, and I'm just going around and around it, taking the tube and making it into a round bead, but it's actually crimping it into the nylon coating of the beading wire.
Oh, okay.
So,
and it looks like you have this going through 1 hole on the 2-hole bead.
Right, yes, just 1 hole.
Okay.
And then I'm going to slide my cutter in just right up next to that crimp and trim off the extra beading wire because we don't need those little tails hanging out. And then we will have our initial connector that we can then bead weave from. And this is gonna be a really strong connection for your clasp.
Very
it's,
substantial.
Right, medium beading wire. Okay, so next we're gonna take a length of our very fine 010 beading wire, and we're gonna start normally with a 10-foot length. I'm using a shorter length here, but normally you would do 10 feet, and you're gonna center your beading wire in the 2nd hole on the 2-hole bead. And then you're gonna string a 2-hole bead on each side of that initial bead. And we'll just flip it down so it's in the right direction, and the same on the other side. And then we are gonna do what's basically like a ladder stitch. I'm gonna take my wire, I'm gonna string 1 more bead, and then I'm gonna do the next row. So I'm gonna pass through the 2nd hole on this bead here, and I'm gonna pull my new bead up next to it. It's a little wonky when you get started, so you need a lot of patience anytime you're starting a bead weaving project.
Isn't that the truth?
It always takes a lot of patience, but eventually you're gonna build something that looks really awesome. I'm gonna string my next bead, and then the second hole over here, and
Nice.
bring it together. And as you keep going, you're gonna build a beautiful shape that looks like a triangle eventually. So I'm gonna add one more bead, and then we're gonna pass the wire back through in the opposite direction, and that's kind of where the ladder stitch comes from. So you'll take the wire and you'll pass back through the 2-hole beads in the opposite direction using the second wire on the opposite side.
So that's where you get your ladder stitch.
That is where you get your ladder stitch. And it's really great to use a wire because it's almost like it has a built-in needle. It has a little point that's going to easily go through your beads and attach it, and then you'll be able to pull it all together.
Okay.
So once you've done all that, you're going to have something that looks like this guy here. And you'll have the wire coming out on each side. And now we're going to talk about, now that we've gone up to have more beads, we're going to talk about just doing a straight pattern.
So that's where the band.
Right.
You'll be creating the band. So it's kind of
Right.
like creating your attachment first. And then, I mean, this is even an attachment to the main part of your bracelet.
Right, yes, and you can make it as thin or as thick as you like. So you're gonna pass the wire through the 2-hole bead and just gently tug it down, snug, and then you can just start adding beads really easily. You're gonna take one bead, and then you'll just go into the second hole on the next 2-hole bead in the row.
Okay.
So you're just adding another row, easy peasy.
So you're just filling in that space in between. I mean, that's a little bit peyote-ish, kind of.
Kind of, yeah. It just kind of, they snug right next to each other. They're almost built for this kind of shape where they just fit together really easily, really comfortably. And as you keep going with this row,
Okay.
you can come back in with the wire in the opposite direction again, just like we did earlier. And that's how you kind of weave it all together. But it's great because we're using wire. It's going to be really strong, which I love because I like a sturdy piece of jewelry.
Yeah, so to finish it, what would we do next?
Okay, so to finish it, we're going to jump over here. You're gonna now reduce to finish the other side of your bracelet.
Okay.
And so to do that, instead of picking up a bead, which is what you would have normally done here, you're gonna slide your wire into the first 2-hole bead, like so. And then you're gonna make another row, but it's gonna be a shorter row this time. And we'll keep reducing in the same way throughout the pattern to get to the end. And then at the end, I wanted to show you what's really great about this is you can just knot it. And it's really simple and easy, just like you would with a thread.
Okay, so you would create your whole triangular point. And then
Right, yeah, by passing the wire back and forth and continuing to reduce until you get to this point. And at the end, what you're going to do is you're gonna have the wires come out in exactly the same place. We'll just move this one over so we can see better. And then we're gonna do a double knot. So we're gonna do a leftover right, pull it nice and tight and snug. Make sure your bead is fitting in the right space. And then we're gonna do a right over left, so the opposite direction. And snug it down so it's nice and tight. I like to put a little dab of glue on it, just a jewelry glue that's gonna be able to sort of seal it so I know it's nice and tight and concrete. And then you can just take your cutters and trim right up next to that knot, and the glue will ensure that it's secure. And then you can finish it off in the same way we started it, with medium beading wire and a crimp.
Okay.
And that's how you would add your toggle.
Okay, so do you take your beading wire and place it through this bead here?
You do, right.
Okay, to add our attachment just like we did in the beginning.
Right, yep, there's a hole left over in the 2-hole bead that's just right for adding your final attachment. And then you get that nice secure attachment with a thicker beading wire.
Great idea. And I wouldn't have
you.
thought ever to mix and match these together, but that makes a lot of sense.
It does, because at the clasp, that's such a weak, vulnerable point in jewelry, because we pull and yank on it.
Especially for bracelets.
Yes, especially for bracelets.
Right.
I
Well,
agree.
You brought some beautiful samples, so I'd love to make sure that we get to take a look.
Okay.
And so here's the one that we made.
Yes, that's the finished piece.
I love that. Totally perfect for the sea theme and beautiful colors.
Thank you. I like it a lot too.
It's really pretty. And then this one is a project from your book that shows a way that you can combine colors.
Right, and you can go up and down to make a diamond shape rather than just the straight bead weave that we did today.
So it's the same type of technique, but you do that triangular reducing and then...
And expanding. Right.
Right.
Yeah. And then
The necklaces are beautiful too. I love these. These are
thank
great.
you. And that's just the triangle that we started with. So you can really take this project and morph it into a bunch of different things just by reducing and adding bead weave.
Great idea. Well, thank you so much, Sarah.